If there's one game in the Devil May Cry franchise I've wanted to talk about the most here, it was absolutely going to be Devil May Cry 3. I mean, I've heard the stories growing up that this game was the DMC game that everyone and their mama sang high praise for at their local church, and I kind of believed them. I heard the choir, and as I booted that game up, I was really getting the hype and all. The action was speaking of my soul, and I was understanding why this game was considered the best of what the franchise offered and one of Capcom's bests. Until I dropped it and never got back to it ever since. Hey, I am just as confused as you. Now, it wasn't because the game was hard, or well, that hard, but for some reason, Destiny was determined to keep me from seeing the damn credits roll. That didn't stop me though, because I picked it up recently to continue where I left off, and I got more mileage out of that playthrough before I dropped it again and say, hey, I should play Kingdom Hearts again. So if my math is correct here, it took me 3 attempts, 2 different consoles, and 4 years to finally play this damn game, so you better subscribe after this. That is all I'm gonna say. Seriously, the circumstances I had with this entry were something entirely, but to understand what made this game dramatically different from its predecessors, we gotta mention the game's direction. Hideaki Itsuno took charge as the game's director from day one this time around, seeing that he wanted to make something for the fans he knew would enjoy, despite his best efforts to salvage Devil May Cry 2's development in the 6 months that he took charge. After all, DMC2 had glimmers of potential throughout, but with the messy development it ultimately had, it ended up being what it was. As a result, Devil May Cry 3's production was massively upscaled to ensure the game would deliver the heavy-duty action that the first game brought back in 2001, and rather than continuing the events of the previous games, Devil May Cry 3 instead became a prequel, having the moniker Dante's Awakening as part of its tagline, and showcasing a much younger Dante in its promotional material. Not gonna lie, going that far back into the timeline was an interesting choice, and I think it more than gives a unique charm and provides the perfect groundwork to start retconning shit the previous entries never fully elaborated on. Bottom line, this was the Devil May Cry game to experience, and in 2005 it hit store shelves to a rather bold reception, so to speak. When DMC3 initially released for North America, its normal difficulty was actually Japan's hard mode, making the game barely playable for its Western audience. Probably so that they wouldn't beat it during the whole weekend after renting it from Blockbuster or something. I don't know, because I never actually experienced this myself back in 2005, as you know, I was in preschool and worried about whether or not it was my turn to play Sonic Adventure DX on the GameCube, and the idea of Dante and demons wasn't until much later in my life, but rest assured, the game's reception here in the States was very American, you can say. It was then that a year later, Capcom would release the special edition to make things easier, rebalancing everything and giving this game the release it really deserved, and it would end up being the one to get re-releases down the line. But if we're talking about a true definitive edition, then we gotta talk about the Switch version, because had I not known about this version beforehand, then this video would have been completely different. This game saw a re-release on the Switch sometime in February of 2020, and I consider this one to be the best version to play DMC3 simply because you can switch between all of Dante's styles with a press of a D-pad. Yeah, I'm dead serious. In the original version, you can only switch Dante's combat forms in the item shop or before a mission, and this can ruin the pacing if you want to get into the action and all, but with the Switch releases freestyle mode, that's more of a non-issue. Plus, the Switch version allows you to play the original version just fine, so I guess this really is the best way to play Devil May Cry 3. Not that I'm complaining, because I can play this game via handheld whenever I'm too lazy to sit at my desk, and that's a win for me and also for you, so go right ahead and get this version whenever you can. That said, with me finally finishing this game, let's see what exactly Devil May Cry 3 is all about. While in the middle of a chill-out session at his newly established office, Dante is greeted by a zombie from Resident Evil who goes by the name of Arkham. And yes, that's a description I'm giving the man because take a side-by-side comparison and the proof is in the pudding. He tells Dante he has an invitation to extend from his brother Vergil, and upon accepting the invitation, he gets sent the appetizer to get the party started. Eager for some action, Dante decides to kickstart his journey by having one of the most badass moments in all of video game history. In the meantime, Arkham's with Vergil at the top of an imposing tower called the Temeni Gru, a prison said to have held high-level demons that Sparta once imprisoned as a link between worlds, all to distract Dante as a means to search for true power, for Vergil believes that with the help of the amulets that their mother gave them, he can open the portal to the underworld and claim its power as his own. To do something with it, the game doesn't actually elaborate. It's implied that Vergil's motivation for power is because he carries the burden of not being strong enough to protect his mother, which I completely understand. Vergil is traumatized and wants to get stronger to protect whatever the hell he wants to protect, and if it's having to summon the gates of hell, no, not you, Rodon, is the way to do it, then again, I completely understand. Though those demons owe me money from both home and auto insurance. Vergil, you selfish prick. With everything set in motion, Dante makes way to confront his brother, throwing hands with any demonic matter that comes his way, including this weird snake worm thing that shoots electricity. Okay, buddy. After Dante reunites with Vergil at the top of the tower, he ends up on the losing side, but not long before he awakens his double trigger to remind Vergil that hey, he's the protagonist here. Also, Dante, what's with you and getting impaled by a sword? You got a fetish or what? Anywho, Vergil and Arkham make their grand exit, and Dante is back on the quest to stop his brother and retrieve his amulet, but not without some additional help. He's got some aid from the demons he encounters in his travels, lending Dante their power, as well as this woman of the week named Lady, who instantly greets himself similar to Dante.
Are you going to the party? What's the hurry? Didn't you get an invitation?
By the way, Lady isn't actually her real name. It's what Dante calls her after asking for her actual name, which later turns out to be Mary, and not with Dante here. Lady does sound better. She's got her own agenda climbing the tower and will not hesitate to shoot down any demon that's in her way, including Dante. Guns, motorcycles, a giant-ass RPG with a knife stuck to it, Lady is just as prepared for the journey and equally as capable because oh my god, look at the level of insane John Woo acrobatics she can pull off. She doesn't even have any demonic blood in her, by the way, and she's out here performing Nightwing levels of lethal combat against these supernatural threats. Damn, what a girl boss. The real reason she's actually in the tower, though, is to stop Arkham, who is revealed to be her father later on in the story. Arkham was so obsessed with demonic power that he ended up killing Lady's mother in order to obtain it, so Lady is out here purely for revenge, hence being constantly and ironically on demon time throughout the entire game. Something I actively enjoyed because not a lot of action was given to both Trish and Lucia respectively, due to them being sidelined by Dante and his antics in those entries. Meanwhile, Lady shows up with guns and some roses here and brings a presence to her character that I'm very excited to see more of in future games. But everything falls into place as Dante, Vergil, and Lady meet up for one showdown, before realizing that they've all been pranked by MTV, I mean none other than Arkham himself, who would use Vergil to open the doorway to hell and breakdancing in the process to show that yeah, he got the upper hand. With the Underworld's portal now open, Dante and Vergil make their way to Arkham for one final stand, now looking like a complete and total mess that only a mother could love. But the two brothers claim their victory over Arkham, and as one final push, they send the dude packing while yelling out the best line in the franchise.
Jackpot.
Afterwards, they have one final battle to determine who's the strongest son of Sparta, with Dante coming out on top but at the cost of losing his brother, as he decides to stay in the underworld as an act of defeat. With now Vergil gone, Dante continues to shred demons with the help of Lady, now giving his shop a name that he can call his own, Devil May Cry, while rocking his own new drip that's the same as that of DMC1's, which is some neat continuity building if you ask me. Meanwhile, Lady is off somewhere for the time being. Where exactly, we don't know. She was never a part of the story of both DMC1 and DMC2, so I can't really give you a straight answer, but hey, I'm sure we'll see her again in DMC4. Listen guys, wherever she's going, I'm gonna go with her. That's all I'm saying on that front, alright? But other than that, I have to say, this game was a really solid time. Now, unlike the previous games, I really enjoyed this game's story. Not because of the plot, but more so because of the presence the characters have the moment they're on screen. It was madly entertaining, and not a single character bored the hell out of me, and I even enjoyed Arkham as the main villain compared to Arius and Mundus. Which, by the way, he makes a cameo appearance if you get the bonus ending with Vergil. Arkham is part of the entire journey from start to finish, being the most involved in the story, given he's the antithesis of Lady and adds to her story within the game. A man madly in love with the idea of demonic power, while Lady is a reminder of the price to pay for those ambitions. I know some think he's the weakest link because of how stoic he seems to be, but I think that's honestly part of his villainous charm. It's a stark contrast to Dante and the gang because of how methodical and calm he appears, and when it was obviously revealed that he was betraying Vergil, it worked for me. Part of the story, he's also revealed to be Jester, this Looney Tunes chaotic chucklefuck who plays a role in expressing Arkham's more sadistic pleasures. Constantly pestering Dante, he's just as entertaining to watch, and the perfect duality to Arkham, especially when it is revealed that Jester was him all along, setting things in motion for him to enact his plans before getting 2 bullets from the Smarter Bros. I can't deny and say also that I would have liked more out of Arkham as well, but considering he was playing 2 different roles, I guess you can argue you got to see Arkham in his totality, and I'm actually fine with that. Though if you ask me, even though Arkham was a good villain and all, the reason I was mostly intrigued by the story was because of Vergil. I mean, that's why people come back to DMC3 in the first place, and it's because of this dude right here. Vergil steals the show whenever he's on screen, commanding a presence that, Jesus, you can feel it in the air that he's definitely the complete opposite of Dante. Quiet, charismatic, reserved, and motivated to get the job done, Vergil did such an excellent job conveying those emotions on screen, and the cutscenes he had with Dante were some of the best, if not iconic. The non-stop action as a whole is the best thing for me regarding Devil May Cry 3, and it's all thanks to how they make Dante as a character here. Almost to the point that he's basically a complete rewrite of what they were going with beforehand, and I'm just glad that they did that. An apology to the fans for the way they wrote him in DMC2 because he's more brash, confident, and exudes the cheesy charisma that Dante brought back in the first game. Dante is just more of himself here, and I'm all for it. I also think that because of Resident Evil 4, a game that also released around the same time, they took notes from Leon and implemented that wisecrack persona with Dante here, which wouldn't be a surprise if you asked me. Leon and Dante share the same DNA after all, especially since Devil May Cry was originally a Resident Evil 4 prototype.
As it turns out, while I was researching the game's development for this game, I gotta get an idea as to the headspace of the developers at the time. I noticed that in regards to DMC2's development and why Dante was so straight-faced the whole time during that game was because they thought that the quippiness of Dante would not work.
According to its development, the writers of DMC2 had to rework Dante's lines to be more serious because, and I quote, a Capcom producer didn't like how unserious he was in the first game. It's always that one guy who ruins it for the rest of us, huh? But Devil May Cry 3 didn't have that issue, thankfully, since we have the de facto Dante we'll see in future games. This Dante would even be voiced by the man, legend, and Red Power Ranger himself, Ruben Langdon, who even did some of his own stunts for the mocap of this game's cutscenes. He brings a spark to Dante in this entry that solidifies the personality and charm that we all know and love, and I gotta say, the mocap for the game looks like everyone had a fun time with the overall production. I even love Vergil's voice actor Daniel Southworth, who gives the conviction and motivation for power in his voice delivery that speaks to who Vergil is as a character. It's great seeing the constant back and forth Vergil and Dante have in this game, and it's all thanks to these two. The first interaction of the two dudes at the top of the tower says it all for me, and the voice direction in general made up for a high quality scene.
You showed up.
You sure know how to throw a party. No food, no drinks, and the only babe just left.
My sincerest apology, brother. I was so eager to see you, I couldn't concentrate on preparations for the bash.
But Dante, man, I can go on and on about how better written he is here because I was actually glued to the screen every time he was on screen. Bursting with life and energy and equipped with one-liners, this Dante is just ready to do what he does best, slaying demons with style and looking like a dork after the fact. I never get bored with seeing him do whatever hat trick he has up his sleeves, whether it was running in an almost Mach speed to catch a rebellion before getting eaten by the Leviathan, or him going all kung fu on some demons with a motorcycle to the audience of no one but me, because I sure as hell would have applauded for that stunt he pulled and for understanding that, yeah, cool guys don't look back at explosions. explosions, to parrying ladies' bullets with his own in mid-air. The level of entertainment is euphoric, which makes the game's presentation all that more perfect. Overall, the game made up for what the previous games lacked, and I can't wait to see how the other games try to do with what this game obviously did successfully and to great effect. Yes, is it flashy and could there be stronger points? Absolutely, but I don't think narrative is what makes these games good, so long as it's consistent enough with what they're trying to build here.
But now having finishing the game myself, I gotta say, this was such a really fun time, you know? And I understand why when it comes to talking about Devil May Cry as a whole, a lot of people really talk about this game specifically because it set a precedent as to what the rest of the franchise is gonna be moving forward, especially in terms of presentation and combat and all that kind of stuff, where you'll see certain games after the fact and see them either be something similar to DMC3 but falling short in some areas, or being just close enough to the concept of what this game did but just slightly doing it enough so that it just stands out on its own without so much compromising and kind of being too compared to DMC3 here, which kind of says a lot about what this game is as a whole.
But Devil May Cry 3, yeah, this was awesome, man, though I should set the record straight. While I freaking love the gameplay, it's the one that had me on my toes constantly, because if you ever so slightly play on autopilot, you start to get your shit kicked in sideways. Special Edition may have rebalanced the difficulty to be more playable, but fuck is it still hard as balls. For your first playthrough, you're getting your ass beat with a swarm of enemies that will be hounding you at any second, and damn, with the boss fights especially, you're getting a double dose of getting knocked the hell out too. Enemies were constantly aggressive towards me, and so I had to adapt to this game's difficulty by learning how Dante's movements work sooner rather than later, and when you do that, oh baby, you're dishing out combos left and right like Dante is shaking these demons down for their money. Makes sense too, since they did wreck a shop in the beginning, so yeah, pop off, king. The game's combat sets the foundation for future games moving forward, I'm sure, and it was something that kept me wanting more every time I was mowing down enemies. Unlike Devil May Cry 2, I was getting way more mileage out of gameplay and combat of Devil May Cry 3 because it didn't bore me to death, and I actually felt like I had some executive input. I had insane adrenaline rushes whenever I wanted to get the S ranks to even the triple S in this game's ranking system, which yeah, that's a thing here. And getting to the groove of things with the swordplay was a great feeling overall. No other hack and slash by far has had me wanting to play for hours on end, and the last time I felt this way was with Bayonetta. Dante's arsenal in this game is massively improved, and I will say it's the best thing out of this game for me. Compared to the previous games, Dante got way more weaponry to slash through enemies, and is my favorite one so far because of how diverse they all are. While you can use Rebellion, Dante's default weapon, for most of the game, you have a whole bunch of other weapons you can use at your disposal the more you progress. Now, it's not a bad choice, it's the best first weapon because it can deal way more damage and moves than whatever Dante was doing with it back in Devil May Cry 2. Hell, it's not even the same design looking back, so no wonder he wasn't swinging with the same finesse, because this dude can swing this shit like it's nothing. It's the perfect weapon to launch enemies in the air and stagger them for a bit, and I found it to be sort of old reliable that got me to appreciate the swordplay in this game a lot more. You also got Cerberus, these nunchucks that harness the power of ice and do kung fu flips with. I friggin' love using these against hordes of enemies, especially with that sideways flip that Dante does and this windmill ability that swings the nunchucks like they're a wind turbine. Best means to get some enemies on the ground if you ask me, and perfect if you want to keep the rank going at the top right of the screen. Agni and Rudra, these twin blades, were useful for more ground range and coverage because you're pretty quick on your feet with these bad boys. I love the animation of Dante running towards enemies with these guys, and they are great for bursting out combos whenever you're in the mood to. If you're ever bored of using Rebellion, just swap it with these guys and you're going to have the time of your life. With some exceptions, of course. Now, with Nevan, I have to be honest here. At first, I thought I was going to hate this weapon. In fact, I insisted I was going to hate it because it didn't feel as compelling to use as the other weapons. It's a guitar that acts as a scythe to launch enemies, but its main gimmick is just riffing up some bats to send out as projectiles. And while it's unreliably slow because enemies bombard you before you can even get your solo out, you can still launch enemies with this side riff you do and switch to another weapon to get some action going. But the reality I found was that Nevan's true purpose is nothing more than pure crowd control. Doesn't surprise me because Dante does put on a show the minute he gets his hands on her. Really, Dante can do this insane spinning move that, when timed right, you can trigger the second spinning attack to the mix, causing mass destruction in the process. And when I found this out, oh, I instantly fell in love with Nevan, Booba notwithstanding, and spammed the shit out of that combo, turning Dante into the fearsome Beyblade in existence that even Levi Ackerman is shaking in his boots. Fuck yeah, I'm letting it rip. Beowulf was the only one I couldn't seem to get the hang of, mainly because it was such a late game weapon if you ask me. They're a pair of devastating gauntlets that are basically like the Ifrit ones back in DMC1, but they're much slower and not as fun to use. I didn't find the crunch with these guys, and by the time I had gotten them, I was so used to using all my other weapons that I didn't bother to properly use them unless it was to show that I could, either in the Bloody Palace mode or just to farm red orbs in previous missions. It was only where I found most of its utility in the final Vergil fight, because for some reason they pack a punch there, and I guess Vergil is allergic to throwing hands. I mean, I did the same thing in the second Nilo Angelo fight back in DMC1, so I guess it's just his kryptonite. I mean, like, listen, Vergil, between you and me, I think the true power is in the fists, not the sword. If you want to fully tap into the power of each double arm too, the game offered these statues to destroy to get blue orb fragments after a certain rank quota is met. They're a fun incentive to learn your moveset for each weapon, but it will be a pain in the ass for your fingers. God, the amount of times I felt my thumbs were developing arthritis from button mashing and locking onto these damn things was an absolute nightmare. Oh, the S ranks, the triple S rank statues sucked big balls because of this alone, because they took so long to do, and you have to be creative in using certain special moves and combos to keep that meter going, especially with certain devil arms. I mean, I managed to do them in the end, reap the reward, but fuck, my poor fingers. And yes, I am aware that in the menu screen you have the ability to see some cool combos to utilize for each devil arm, but I gotta keep it real, I am not memorizing all of them, and the footage speaks for itself. I kept using the same moves over and over again, but I wasn't bored, and I sure as hell won't be creative enough to see the true feats of Dante. I mean, that's why we have YouTube. The guns in this game, I also want to say I didn't really fully utilize them as much. I ended up using Amity and Ivory most of the time because it was the most familiar to me, and on occasion the shotgun, but the others just existed. The Artemis is a cool weapon shooting homing lasers, but it's unreliably slow against enemies here and there, and I didn't like how Dante was standing there with it and being all exposed. The same with the Spiral Rifle and how the recoil has Dante being grounded in one location. And in a game as fast paced and high alert as this one, it's more of a crutch because you lose out on the momentum you're building with the ranking meter when you end up using one of these two guns. And then that just leaves the rocket launcher called the Kalina Ann, which is just Lady's rocket launcher that I only use in the Arkham fight with these eels and not much else. I really wanted to get my mileage out of the damn thing like in DMC2, but hey, there's always New Game Plus, am I right? Every weapon like the previous games have their own upgrades and abilities, to which I am more than fine with farming red orbs to increase the damage output in each of them, but I also didn't like that some weapons had the double jump to unlock, like in Devil May Cry 1. Why was this brought back? I don't know, and it's weird to even do this when in Devil May Cry 2, you had the double jump by default, and that was actually a better idea than the whole game. I guess DMC2 did something right for once. Besides that, I had more than enough red orbs to get the abilities I wanted for each devil arm, and the guns themselves, at least Ebony and Ivory, got the increased power for me to show them that yeah, devils really do be crying. On top of the weapons, you have these different styles to choose from, further increasing Dante's arsenal and upping the ante. Depending on each style, you get more with Dante, and as you level them up, the more you end up making Dante into a juggernaut by endgame. With 6 of these sons of bitches, Quicksilver and Doppelganger being late game, you're well equipped with enemies by the time you get the ball rolling. To get those guys out of the way, Quicksilver allows you to stop time at the cost of Double Trigger, which is essentially the Bracelet of Time from DMC1. I didn't use this a whole bunch because I didn't find the need to, and the same with Doppelganger, which just summons a Dante clone to add more to the frenzy, also at the cost of Double Trigger. Listen, to be frank here, if I'm going to use Double Trigger, it's not for these two things, because the real reason I want to fill up that meter in the first place is to abuse the hell out of it, especially since you don't immediately get Double Trigger at the beginning of the game. You have to wait a few missions to unlock it, and I honestly didn't see this as a major problem. Double Trigger in the previous games was honestly very easy to abuse when you wanted to use it, and the more you upgraded it, the more broken you got. The same is here in DMC3, but it's fine-tuned to be more of a quick power-up just to dish out more power with your combos. Healing is there, but it's very minimal, and bottom line, the game doesn't need you to spam Double Trigger all that bunch anyways because of the aforementioned weapon variety you already get in this game. Although when you use double trigger, it's pretty nice when you swap out with the different weapons and the such. Dante has a different look in terms of his demonic form, so that's also pretty cool to think about as well. As for the other styles, let's cover those real quick. Trickster focus a lot of outmaneuvering your enemies, be it dashing around to evade attacks or getting in close to them, allowing combat to flow at a much faster pace. Basically is what DMC2 tried doing, but in a much better fashion. When you level it up, you even get this cool air dash that gets my Mega Man X brain cell hot and bothered, and for some of the platforming you do in this game, it also helps in those situations. Trickster ended up being my go-to for most of my playthrough here because of the dodge mechanics alone, and for the early portions of the game, it is the best way to familiarize yourself with the difficulty and Dante's movement before you get to use the other styles. Swordmaster emphasizes additional combat, giving Dante more tricks of the trade with his double arms. Be it more aerial combos, the famous stinger with the Rebellion, the spinning Beyblade technique with Nevan as I said earlier, or straight up summon the uppercuts of fury. This one I also used a lot when it came to crowd controlling. Overall, the aerial combos were great to pull off when I tossed enemies up in the air, and compared to DMC1 and DMC2, this was a blessing because oh my god, I can do aerial combos now. That's awesome, and the additional moves alone pack great heat when you need them to. Similar to Trickster, this one was leveled up to the max, and replaying certain missions with it, I got to experience a Dante like no other. Witness him summon a fiery tempest of Agni and Rudra, summon a huge ice barrier with a Cerberus that can trap enemies inside, or a large bat blazer with Nevan. Or how about going all combo mixer with the Rebellion here thanks to this Dante Macabre, and see Dante swinging his blade in the most creative ways possible. Yeah, my man be schmoovin'. Sad to say that the other styles, Gunslinger and Royal Guard, they didn't get much attention. Gunslinger is more gunplay and is an extension of what DMC2 did, which is great because they learned that the gunplay in that game was actually pretty fun, and this style optimizes for that long range combat. What it does is give more gun abilities for Dante to use, depending on the gun of course. Either have Dante jump up and spiral downward like a madman with Ebony and Ivory, use the shotgun as a nunchuck for some AoE damage, or my favorite, have Kalina-an summon mini missiles as projectiles to throw enemies' guard off before delivering some finishing blows. What I used Gunslinger the most though was charging up shots with Ebony and Ivory as a means of getting rid of the pesky motherfuckers that tend to get in the way to stagger them before getting hands on. I'm not saying I didn't like this style, just that I didn't find myself using it as much because it didn't benefit the gameplay style I was going for in this game. The reckless abandon of mashing combos and getting in your face with enemies was all I cared about in Devil May Cry 3, and Gunslinger didn't fulfill that role for me. Royal Guard though, I want to level with you guys real quick, but I completely neglected this motherfucker the entire game. What this style does is maximize defense over offense, having Dante in this kung fu fighting stance to then parry and reflect attacks back at enemies with a strike of a palm. I so desperately wanted to learn how this one worked, but every time I tried it out, I was just unamused by it because Dante stood there doing nothing. Sure, when he gets hit several times and reflects it back, you deal so much damage that it's the best way to deal with annoying bosses, but the cost of being staggered increases. The final Vergil fight was a testament to my inability to pull this style off, and I hope in future DMC games I actually give a crap about Royal Guard to see how utterly broken it can actually be. I mean, based on some footage out there by DMC pros alone, it can be a fun style to use, but nah, just like Gunslinger, it's just not for me. I will say that I did enjoy using all the styles collectively thanks to the Bloody Palace mode, which makes a return from the previous game. Same with the secret missions, which I had a lot of fun finding here, and the Criterion, some of them were kind of nice to beat, and definitely like a great add-on in terms of the overall amount of hours you're already spending in this game alone. Didn't get all of them, but that's okay since I got way more than the first and second game combined, and they didn't also bore the hell out of me because they actually had some fun challenges. Like this one where you have to avoid touching the floor like it's lava for 20 seconds, and you can cheese this by being near one of the walls and jump on an enemy's head several times, resetting your jump animation to the point where you can just spam the damn thing. Or this one where you have to avoid getting hit. There is more merit in doing these missions now than before, which gets me motivated to find the others and see what I missed out. And to go back to Bloody Palace for a second, I love coming here to farm some red orbs and grand EXP for Dante styles. It was such a blast to go through how many floors I can get, and again, that's because of how Dante operates in this game. It's not a snag because I'm easily impressed on the screen with the amount of high-octane stylish combat the game throws at me at every second. Of course, I never fully completed it. I mostly stayed on floor 300 and something because at that point, a man's gotta throw in the towel here and there, but it sure was a fun time regardless. The special edition also gives us a Vergil campaign to add into the mix, but it's more like Vergil going through the same missions as Dante, but having a different opening and ending. Kinda like Meta Nightmare mode from Kirby as you're speedrunning through the game as Vergil, and I'm kinda mixed about this. I wish they gave us a whole new story campaign as Vergil, giving us an idea as to what he was doing while we were busy playing as Dante, to kind of add more to the sense of world building and narrative. It would have benefited Arkham's character too, when you think about it, since those two were glued together most of the time. Here, I'm just going through the same missions I already did, and while it's fun playing as the blue guy here, is not as impactful. As for his playing styles, well, they are limited, like quite literally. Unlike Dante's 6, Vergil only has one style called Dark Slayer, but that's really all you need with him. It's a combination between Swordmaster and Trickster, where Vergil can teleport to dodge attacks and build off good combo games on the ground and air, but is also very technical. I use his teleportation ability as a spot dodge whenever I could, and it's nothing like Dante's dash either. It's just an awkward thing to use for platforming here and there, being better suited for combat situations than for any other form of gameplay. Vergil's moveset and combo game aren't as easy to pull off either compared to Dante's because he's also very precise. His Yamato, for one, is a technical blade to use, more so because it only has a 3-hit combo, and most abilities you unlock are situational, like his Judgment Cuts, where he dashes across the screen to dice some enemies. It ain't my favorite of his double arms, but I can appreciate how methodical it is compared to the more rampaging feats Dante's Rebellion has, showcasing the duality between the two from a gameplay perspective. Same can even be said with Beowulf, and I think this is where I enjoyed using them more compared to Dante. Probably because he has more kick-based attacks and feels more like it was meant for Vergil, and it makes sense too. He was showing off the damn thing after wrecking Beowulf's already decimated body like he was Trunks in the Cell Saga with Mecha Frieza.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
I enjoyed it a ton here, and it is easily my favorite weapon of Vergil's because of how bone-crushing it can be. Same with the Force Edge, because this is the closest you're getting to a Dante-like combo system with Vergil, but it's not as creative. It's fine for what it's able to achieve, and I found myself leveling up this the most, second to Beowulf because of its reach and utility with a Hembreaker and Stinger. But if I want to make the most out of Vergil as a playable character, I stick to Beowulf and using Summon Swords, which are essentially his guns. What's even cooler about these guys is that you can use them as you're using double arms, making higher ranks easier to pull off with the dude, but also at the cost of your fingers having to match both the X and Y buttons like it's a goddamn arcade stick. And at the cost of double trigger too, you can have them in a spiral formation, giving you all the more reason to get those S to triple S ranks. I loved unlocking this ability alone because I'm free to use all my weapons while dancing like a ballerina with those blue swords coming out of who knows where. Mind power, baby, or Vergil's pure alpha dominance and motivation. One or the other. Boss fights are something that altogether I also enjoy from a difficulty standpoint. They were much like the ones back in DMC 1, but with more finesse and style to them, giving me all the more reason to be on my toes as I mentioned earlier. Agni and Rudra are my favorite out of the bosses, Vergil too, because they give you a reason to learn how to play the game right, and if you're not feeling comfortable, then by all means farm red orbs and get that health bar up. The final boss with them felt like a true showdown of brothers and a testament to their ideals, strength, and their reason for being, which is why I wanted to learn how to beat this boss properly. I felt the stakes were so high here that I wasn't angry at me losing to this fight, but more determined than ever before, and that was such a great experience. The last time I even felt this way was with a freaking Soulsborne game. Not that I'm comparing this to those games, so don't take my word out of context in the comments.
Listen, do I look like I work for IGN? No.
The Lady boss fight near the end too was something I also really enjoyed. A battle of the making before Lady realizes that she can't fully judge Dante for being a demon, and Dante for finally acknowledging Lady's feelings and saying the matter against Arkham. And yes, I am one of those who actually liked the Beowulf boss fight, mainly because again the Resident Evil 4 in me was screaming that El Gigante fight in this castle, and that was like its own version of that. I love his aggressiveness, and I felt the need to return the favor as well. But some bosses felt too gimmicky for my liking, mainly the fight inside the Leviathan where you have to smack these two pulsating organisms before the real thing opens up, while also dealing with a pool of enemies that take way too long to kill. You also have Quicksilver, who is constantly teleporting back and forth, and the only way to deal heavy damage to the boss is to hit the carriage, which wasn't visually appealing and quite slow. Doppelganger was the same thing, and I later found out in the boss rush that you have to open all the spotlights to make him flinch as the fight goes on. In the previous fight I had with him, I just egged him on one spotlight and kept doing that for a solid 10 minutes, which dragged the fight more than it should have. The same happened to me with Nevan, where she was such a damage spawn because you have to kill off this bat shield she has before she falls to the ground, and I really didn't like that in the first encounter. Turns out all I needed to do was use Cerberus to get rid of that shield before throwing out the good hands, but the fact that I couldn't have a regular fight with her in the first place was off. I'm sorry, Nevan, but why do you gotta be extra? And by the way, there is a Mega Man style boss rush towards the end, but you don't have to fight all the bosses, just a specific set to open the portal. Why did they do this? I don't know, but hey, any reason to keep playing DMC3 is a good reason in my book, because at the end of the day, I couldn't be more happier. Devil May Cry 3 was a solid time after all, and I think saying solid is more of an understatement. It's honest to God a great and complete 180 from DMC2 that I'm left sitting here going, I need to keep playing this game. And that's exactly what I did. This game isn't just for one playthrough, because there's so much content you can miss out on it alone that it requires multiple playthroughs to get a satisfying feeling. Be it the Bloody Palace mode, the difficulties, the secret missions, to even the costumes and artwork, you will not be bored from this game because the game expects you to come back. I only managed to max out 2 styles, I didn't get all the secret missions, and I didn't see Dante fully decked out in his DMC1 outfit to feel like I got what I wanted with this game, and hell, I consider that to be a good thing. I spent way too much time making this video because of how much I was enjoying this game and doing everything in my power to fully grasp why this game is such a beloved title for so many DMC fans out there. And I think I got too carried away in the end. After all, we got 3 more games to cover in this franchise, but if I could just keep speaking about DMC3, I would, and I could. Seriously, I love everything about this game, in case you couldn't tell already, and how much it reminded me of why I love Capcom, because they seriously delivered here. This is an action game that gives you so much to do and so much to savor, and for the right reasons, giving this a status that stands to the testament of time because of how perfect this game feels nearly 20 years later.
And I can only recount another game from Capcom that released around the same time that had me, feeling the same way I felt with DMC3 here, which would be, as I mentioned earlier, Resident Evil 4, which is another topic altogether that I'm happy to discuss at a different time.
Bottom line, the way that I came out of this game was a refreshing feeling and something so great that it has me excited to keep the DMC train going, and like I said, I recommend it. As if the last who knows how many minutes I spent talking about this game isn't enough, then go right ahead and get the game for yourself through the HD collection that's out in every single platform nowadays. If not the original release, then by all means go get the Switch edition and play this game to your heart's content, because it's not only cheap, but again, honest to God, that great of a time.
I know how long this video is already, but you can tell in certain parts here and there that I had to bite my tongue, so to speak, because if I were to say everything about this game that I enjoyed and kind of critiqued here and there, we'd be here for hours. And as much as I want you guys to, be a part of that ride, I'm gonna have to hold my tongue for in the meantime and all that. But rest assured, I had an amazing time with this game, and I look forward to see what else the franchise has to offer moving forward, because I know past DMC3, we're gonna be jumping consoles for a bit in terms of like the next generation, as DMC3 released for the PS2 around 2005, and then we have 2008's DMC4, which released for the PS3 and the Xbox 360, which obviously I'll cover as to why that's the case in its respective video, and also to kind of tease you guys a little bit in terms of my thoughts so far with DMC4. I'm actually enjoying it so far, but like I said, that's gonna be with its respective video, as opposed to other franchises out there and other games I would like to cover for the channel as well. The goal is 10K for Xenoblade Chronicles. That's a little teaser I've been throwing here and there around the socials, more or less, and to let everybody know that, hey, as the content grows, I want to be a little bit more ambitious, and I would love to go back to talk, RPGs and all that, and Xenoblade Chronicles has been in the back burner for so long. So hey, if we reach 10K, I'd be more than willing to cover that for its respective, review marathon and all that. I also would like to go back to Kirby and Kingdom Hearts for a bit, maybe after DMC, because I am like on the tail end of this marathon already. We just need 3 more games to cover, and they're rather short for the most part. But hey, after this, I would love to talk, Kirby, Kingdom Hearts, Xenoblade Chronicles, anything else, maybe just throw it in the comments. I'd be more than happy, you know, to diversify the content and all of that, because it's not just for me, it's also for you guys there. But like I said, next time we'll see each other with Devil May Cry 4, the special edition to be exact, and I can't wait to talk more about that down the line. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys for the love and support as always. You know, love you all to 120. Stay safe out there. Do good in the world. Have fun. Do what you gotta do here, you know, improve by 1%, as I used to say in other videos as well. This is how you know it's unscripted at this point, but it's made with love and passion. And you know, I love you guys, like I said, to 120 as always. I always mean what I say here, but now I'm rambling, so I gotta end the video here. So you know, peace out, take care, have fun. I'll see you all in the Devil May Cry 4 video. Don't expect a mini skit here. I'm literally ending the video here. Mwah. Bye, see ya guys. Roll the outro.